My name is Ruth Whitmore. I am 69 years old. I used to be a wife, a mother, the backbone of an entire family. Now I am just a quiet woman in a quiet house that creaks more than it laughs. I spent 37 years raising children, supporting a husband who traveled for work, and holding a household together with the strength of a person no one ever sees. I was the glue, the steady hands, the background character of my own life. People assume women like me stop existing once the family no longer needs us. They assume we fade like wallpaper, but something happened on an ordinary Thursday that proved I was still here, still watching, still thinking, still stronger than anyone believed. That morning began with a voice I love. "Grandma, I don't feel well. Can I stay home today?" It was Luna, my 12-year-old granddaughter, the only person who brings noise and light back into this old house. I walked into her room, touched her forehead with the back of my hand, the same way I once did for my son when he was small, warm but not feverish. Her brown eyes avoided mine, as if she was hiding a feeling she could not name. "It's all right, honey. Stay home. Rest. You can stay with me." Her shoulders dropped with relief, and for a moment, I felt needed again. We went downstairs. I brewed coffee in my chipped blue mug, the one my late husband bought me on our 20th anniversary. The kitchen smelled like toasted bread and Earl Grey tea. We sat together in our comfortable silence, the kind of silence only love makes possible. I had no idea that letting Luna stay home that day would save my life. Around lunch, I went upstairs to change out of my robe. My knees ache when I climb stairs, but I never complain. Women like me do not complain. We endure quietly. While I was buttoning my cardigan, Luna heard something downstairs, the sound of a key sliding into the lock, a slow metallic turn, not mine, not Luna's. Someone entered the house. She froze on the couch, then stood up, silent, careful, walking toward her bedroom door. She pushed it open just a crack, looking through the sliver of space. Her little heart hammered in her chest, and she saw him, a man in a gray work jacket. He looked around like a stranger breaking into a stranger's home. But it wasn't a stranger. It was my son, Nolan Whitmore, the boy I raised alone after my husband left, the boy I worked double shifts for, the boy I protected from this world with both hands and my whole heart. Luna watched him walk toward the coat rack near the door. My green winter coat hung there, the one I wear to the grocery store every Monday. Nolan reached into his pocket and took out something small, white, a tiny plastic bag. He slid it into the pocket of my coat. Luna held her breath. Her hands shook. She wanted to scream, but her throat locked. Nolan pulled out his phone. His voice was low, but Luna heard every word. "It's done. Call the police tonight. She won't suspect a thing." He slipped the phone back into his jacket, looked around the house one more time, then left as quietly as he came. The door clicked shut. Luna stood shaking, alone with the terrible truth, a truth no child should ever see. Upstairs, I was still smoothing the sleeves of my cardigan, wondering whether to make chicken soup or leftover stew for lunch. I had no idea that the son I gave my entire life to was planning to destroy what was left of mine. I did not know that in a few hours, the police would arrive at my door. My reputation of 69 years would be dragged into suspicion. And the person who wanted me gone was not a stranger, not a criminal, not someone from the outside. It was my own son. The child I raised with sacrifice and unconditional love had chosen greed over blood, and innocence over convenience. All while my granddaughter, small and trembling, watched everything. You never think betrayal will come from your own child until it does. And when it happens, when the truth slices through the illusions you held for decades, only one question remains. Is a mother's love enough to save a child who has already chosen darkness? The morning Luna stayed home, the house breathed the way old houses do, with the faint tick of the hallway clock and the soft rattle of a loose window latch. I moved through the rooms in a pattern I had kept since my husband died. Make the bed tight enough to bounce a coin, open the curtains halfway so the sun never washes the photographs, and put water on for coffee. My blue porcelain cup waited on the counter, the one with a hairline crack that runs like a river along the handle. It matches a saucer that has survived 5 moves, 2 children, and 1 marriage that ended with a note on the kitchen table. I still place the cup on the saucer as if someone is watching, as if care has an audience, as if rituals can convince a house to keep its promises. I brewed the coffee and set Luna's Earl Grey beside it. The steam curled into the air like a ribbon, and for a moment I pretended this was any Thursday from the years when I cooked for 4 people, and there were footprints of different sizes at the door. The mug my husband gave me on our 20th anniversary sat on the upper shelf, a heavy white diner mug with a thin red ring. He had bought it at a gas station in Utah on a trip we barely afforded. He said it felt right in the hand and would last longer than flowers. He was right about that. The mug outlasted us. I use it when my bones ache. I hold it like a hand I do not have anymore. When Luna sleeps here, I cut her toast in triangles and line the pieces on a plate like sails. I do it the way I once did for Nolan when he was 6 and believed sandwiches tasted better with shapes. That memory is easy to love. He used to press the crust together and call them boats, then ask for extra jam because he wanted the river to be sweet. I did not know what sweetness would cost. Later, mothers rarely do. We pour it anyway. After breakfast, Luna curled under a knitted throw on the couch and I stood at the sink, washing our dishes in warm water. The window over the sink frames the maple in the yard. Last fall, I raked its leaves alone for the first time. I did not cry. I stacked them into a neat mountain and burned them in a tin barrel while the sky closed in early. Quiet does not scare me, it teaches, but quiet can hide things if you let it. Before my husband left, our table was always loud, not cruelly loud, the kind of loud that comes from stories spilling over each other. He would toss his tie on the chair and say the sales quotas were impossible, then steal a carrot from the stew and kiss my shoulder. The kids argued about who got the last roll, and I pretended not to notice when Nolan smuggled it under the table to the dog. On Sundays, I roasted chicken with rosemary and lemon. I remember the way the skin blistered and shone, the way the house smelled like home from the front steps. There is a photograph in the hallway of one of those Sundays. I'm standing by the oven with a dish towel on my shoulder, my hair pinned up, and there are 3 plates on the counter, each with a small hill of mashed potatoes. You can see love on a plate if you know where to look. After he left, the table made a different sound. Forks set down gently. A chair that stayed empty. I learned to count bills under the glow of the range hood. I learned that coupons can be folded into an origami of survival. Nolan grew tall. His voice dropped. He asked for expensive shoes I could not buy, and then pretended he never wanted them. I told him we would be all right, and I meant it, even when I had to sell my wedding china to fix the roof. The blue porcelain cup stayed. I refused to let it go. Some objects hold a marriage better than vows. On the Thursday, Luna stayed home. The phone vibrated on the counter with a message from Helen next door. Helen is 72. She was a nurse for 40 years and can read a face faster than a chart. She texts me every morning with weather and gossip, small things that stitch a day together. Need anything from the market, it said. I looked at the fruit bowl, at the bananas freckling too fast, and wrote back, "Just your smile across the fence." 15 minutes later, she appeared at my back door with a brown paper bag and a cardigan the color of butter. She always brings extra. Retired nurses never arrive empty-handed. "You look steady," she said, setting the bag on the counter. "Steady is good. Steady wins." "I am fine," I said. "Luna is here. She has a touch of not wanting to be at school." Helen laughed softly. She understands the illness called the world. She poured herself a splash of coffee and sipped from the mug with the red ring, then set it down with the gentleness of someone who has wrapped too many fragile things. "You know," she said, "my son calls every Sunday at 4. He's not perfect, but he calls. Do not make a face. I am bragging because I earned the bragging. Men need training like puppies." "I train mine," I said. He forgot the commands. Helen did not rush in with advice. She looked at me the way good nurses do, as if listening is a treatment. "You kept this house standing," she said. "You kept yourself standing. When the ground moves, spread your feet." Luna stirred on the couch and sat up. Helen waved. The girl waved back with a shy smile that always makes my chest loosen. Luna trusts Helen. Children can smell safety. Helen reached into her bag and pulled out 2 oranges and a pair of wool socks. "For your little friend's cold feet," she said, "and for your vitamin C. Even warriors need citrus." She left with a kiss on my cheek and a promise to water her roses later. I watched her cross the yard, her shoulders squared, her gray hair pinned with 2 silver clips. Helen married a good man who died kind. It shows in the way her kindness is restful, not hungry. She is my mirror in one direction. In the other, I am my own mirror. A woman who did not get the softness she earned, but grew a softer place inside anyway. I wiped the counter, then polished the blue porcelain cup with the edge of a dish towel. The crack along the handle caught the light. You could call it damage. I call it a map. You follow the line and it shows where pressure has been and how the glaze held anyway. You tell yourself that if clay can learn, so can a heart. When Nolan grew up and moved out, the calls got shorter. Then they stopped. He came by sometimes for tools he never returned, or to ask if my spare bedroom could hold boxes that never went back to his apartment. I made soup. He scrolled through his phone. I told myself he was busy. It is amazing how long a mother can live on scraps of hope. The body turns it into calories. But love is not a calorie. It is a contract. It needs signatures. It needs to be renewed. By noon, I had a pot of chicken soup simmering and Luna's homework stacked neatly in a folder. The house, so ordinary, held us in its wooden ribs. I do not know when the sound of the key at the door reached Luna in the living room, only that it did, and that she did exactly what a brave child does when the truth arrives too soon. She was quiet. She watched. She remembered. I was upstairs smoothing the sleeves of my cardigan, adjusting the line of the shoulder, still believing that a mother's care can resist erosion if you keep applying it like oil. When I came down, Luna's face looked thinner. Children do that when they carry something heavy. They hollow out a little to make room. I asked if she wanted soup. She nodded. She lifted the spoon carefully and drank as if the warmth could hold her together. I did not push questions across the table. I set the white mug with the red ring near my hand and wrapped my fingers around it. The heat climbed into my wrists and made a promise I chose to believe. I looked at the maple outside. The leaves were small and new. They did not know about storms yet. Or maybe they did and lifted their green hands anyway. Helen texted again. "Call if you need me." I looked at Luna and found my answer in the way she watched the door. I would call if I needed to, and I would know when I needed to. Steady is good. Steady wins. I keep my wallet in the top drawer beside the stove. I have done it for years because that drawer stays cool and shallow, a place where money and paper feel safe. 3 days before Luna stayed home, I reached for it to pay the plumber and found the bills reversed. My debit card was tucked behind an old library receipt instead of the insurance card it usually hugs. The zipper tab pointed left, not right. Small things, but the body notices before the mind does. I stood there with my hand still in the drawer and told myself I had been distracted that morning. I had been thinking about the gutters and the maple and whether the roof needed patching before summer storms. I closed the drawer gently. I reminded myself that memory shifts when you get older. I promised I would be more careful. I did not say out loud what had flickered through me like a cold match. Keys have copies. Good intentions do too. That afternoon, I went to the bank to withdraw cash for groceries. The teller looked at me with the bright courtesy that young people wear like a uniform. She asked if I wanted to set up online access. I said not today. I keep a slim ledger and a stubby pencil in my purse. Numbers look truer when the point of the pencil scratches them into paper. On the walk home, I thought about the reversed bills again. The street smelled like rain on warm concrete. A boy on a scooter zipped by. His mother called for him to slow down. Slow down is what mothers say when fear pretends to be advice. By evening, the house had settled into its night noises. The hallway clock ticked with that steady metronome that holds a room together. Luna had dozed off after dinner with a book open on her chest. I lifted it and marked her page with a grocery receipt. I rinsed our bowls, wiped the counters, and set the blue porcelain cup upside down to dry. I almost called Helen to ask about locks and locksmiths, then decided against it. I wanted one more night of believing I was just forgetful. Denial is a soft sweater. It warms until it burns. The doorbell rang just after 8. It was a polite sound, the kind that belongs to neighbors and mail carriers, not to trouble. I wiped my hands and went to the door, expecting Helen or a package. When I opened it, Nolan stood there in the yellow porch light, his gray jacket damp from the mist that had started to fall. He did not smile. He did not say hello. He stepped inside and looked past me into the living room as if taking inventory. The damp rose from his jacket like a smell I knew and did not want to name. "Luna here," he said, not as a question. "She's asleep," said. "Use your quiet voice." He nodded without looking toward her. He put his hands in his pockets and rocked on his heels like a man practicing patience rather than feeling it. When he finally met my eyes, his gaze was both familiar and far away, the look someone gets when the past is a story they are tired of hearing. "Mom," he said, "I need to talk about the house." "The house is standing," I said. "So are we." He exhaled, not a sigh, more like a reset. "This is not complicated. I have a friend who can put the deed in trust. It would protect you if something happened. It would make everything easier for me to handle. For Luna, too. It is a smart move." "You want me to sign," I said. "It is for your protection," he said. "If you get confused or if there is an emergency, I can act. Quick decisions save money." He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and laid it on the entry table, as if that piece of wood were a desk and this moment was an appointment. I did not reach for it. The paper looked too white in our warm light. It had the crispness of new plans. Behind him, the porch bulb hummed and a moth tapped the glass like a tiny knuckle. "Who is your friend?" I asked. "A lawyer," he said. "He does this all the time." "His name?" I said. "That does not matter," he said. "What matters is that we do this before something goes wrong." I glanced at the hallway mirror. I saw my face calm and lined, the face I wear when storms want to measure me. I thought of the drawer, the reversed bills, the card tucked out of place. I thought of keys and copies, of how quietly a lock can surrender. I folded my hands so he would not see them shake. When I spoke, my voice came out steady, the way a rope stays steady when a person climbs it hand over hand. "Do not worry," I said. "I'm still clear enough to sign what needs to be signed." His shoulders dropped a fraction, relief arriving like a coin landing on a counter. He reached for the envelope, ready to unsheath the papers. I let the quiet hold a beat longer than comfort allows. "And I am clear enough," I added, "to refuse what should be refused." The coin slid off the counter and hit the floor between us. He stared at me as if I had stepped out of character. Children rewrite their mothers in their heads. They forget the author has a pen too. "I am trying to help you," he said. "You are 69. You live alone. Your memory is not perfect." "My memory is not perfect," I said, "but it is honest. I remember where I keep my wallet. I remember what trust is supposed to feel like. I remember what I taught you about asking, not taking." His jaw worked, a small muscle beating in his cheek. "You do not understand what I am dealing with." "Then help me understand," I said. "Say the parts you are leaving out." He looked away, studied the framed photograph of the maple in winter, as if it held a clue. He tapped the envelope with 2 fingers. "There are timelines. There are people counting on me." "There were people counting on me for 37 years, I said. "I fed them before I fed myself. I signed papers that needed signing. I also tore up papers that needed tearing." He smiled, not kindly. "You are stubborn." "I am careful," I said, "and I am not alone. Luna is here. Helen is next door. My doctor has my chart. My pastor knows my name. I am not a house you can move into by changing the mail." He picked up the envelope and slipped it back into his pocket. The porch light hummed louder. The moth kept its soft tapping. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the sour under the cologne, the panic under the pitch. "If something happens and the bank freezes your accounts," he said, "you will wish you had listened." "If something happens and I have signed away what is mine," I said, "I will not be here to wish for anything." He studied me again, looking for an angle that used to work. I kept my eyes level. I have spent a life measuring flour without a scale. I can measure lies without a meter. Come back when you want dinner, I said, not when you want signatures. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He pulled the door open and let the damp night air reach into the hallway. On the threshold, he paused and spoke without turning. "You will change your mind," he said. "A crisis changes everything." I rested my hand on the blue porcelain cup on the sideboard. The glaze felt cool against my palm. "A crisis clarifies," I said. "It does not confuse." He left without another word. The door shut with the careful click of a man who wants to be remembered as polite. I stood there until the moth settled and the porch light steadied. Then I checked the top drawer beside the stove. I counted the bills and smoothed the zipper tab to the right. I wrote the total in my ledger with my stubby pencil and underlined the date. I am not perfect. I am not broken. I am a woman who knows where she keeps things and why. And tonight I knew exactly what I would keep. I did not sleep much after Nolan left. The house settled into its night rhythm, and I lay awake listening to the clock carve the darkness into halves and quarters, the way a careful hand slices an apple. I have spent my life making halves and quarters stretch. I can make time do it too. The blue porcelain cup waited on the sideboard like a small moon, catching the porch light that slipped through the curtains. I kept thinking about the way Nolan stood in my doorway, as if entrances belonged to him, as if history could be renegotiated with an envelope and a tone. Mothers get used to swallowing things, words, pride, the last spoonful of soup. But that night, something inside me refused to go down. It sat in my throat like a truth that had finished being polite. I told myself I would not make decisions angry or tired. That is how people sell what cannot be replaced. So I made tea at 2 a.m. and drank it slowly in the kitchen, both hands on the mug with the red ring. The steam softened my face and made a small tent of warmth around me. I am good at creating small tents. When the children were little and storms took the power out, I would light candles and tell stories about a woman who could find her way in the dark because she knew the shape of her own furniture. The secret was never magic. The secret was familiarity. Tonight I tried to remember that I still know my own house. I also know my own math. The wallet that felt touched. The key that turned in a lock that had not complained. The way my son used the word protection the way men sometimes use the word love. As a lever. Not a promise. There is a loneliness that visits women my age. It does not arrive with violins. It arrives with envelopes. It arrives with people who lean on your kindness because they know it will not push back. I poured the last of the tea and whispered to the dark kitchen what I had never said aloud because I believed it would sound like self-pity. I have spent my whole life caring for other people. When it is my turn to be soft, there is no soft place set aside for me. The sentence did not break me. It steadied me. I rinsed the mug, turned it upside down to dry, and went back to bed. The sheets were cool. Sleep came by inches. I dreamed of the maple dropping leaves into my hands faster than I could catch them. In the morning, Luna woke early and padded into my room with her hair stuck to one cheek. I pulled her into bed and we lay shoulder to shoulder watching the square of light on the wall shift from gray to gold. There are mornings when silence puts a balm on the places that ache. This was almost one of them. After breakfast, I walked next door to see Helen. Her roses were pruned within an inch of their lives. She believes in strong cuts for stronger blooms. She was kneeling in the soil with her gloves tucked in her waistband, hands dirty on purpose. That is one of the reasons I trust her. People who are afraid of dirt are often afraid of the truth. "You look like you did not sleep," she said, standing and brushing her knees. "Tell me the shape of it." I told her about the envelope and the language of protection, about the drawer and the bills turned backward, about the way Nolan's eyes kept sliding to the places where money hides in a room. I kept my voice even. If I let it shake, I might start apologizing for telling the truth. Women my age apologize so easily. We could butter bread with the word sorry. Helen listened without interrupting, then led me to her porch. She poured lemonade from a sweating pitcher and set the glass in front of me with the care of a nurse placing medicine. "You know what I am going to say?" she began. "Say it anyway," I said. "I need to hear it with the morning in it." She took a breath. "Not everyone who is born from you belongs to you." The sentence sat between us like a stone that had been underwater for years and was finally laid on the bank to dry. I looked at it. I looked at her. I wanted to argue for biology, for the way blood remembers. I wanted to recite every midnight I kept watch over a fever and every paycheck I broke into smaller pieces so it would last long enough to buy shoes and field trip money. Instead, I pressed my lips together and let the sentence be heavy. Helen leaned back and watched a sparrow hop along the rail. "I loved both my boys," she said. "One of them loves me back in ways that land. The other loves me in ways that float. I had to learn the difference and stop pretending that floating is the same as landing. You cannot build a life on air." "I know," I said, "but there is a loyalty that feels stitched into my bones. Removing it would be like unsewing myself." "You do not have to remove it," she said. "You have to hem it. You have to keep it from unraveling your whole dress." I smiled. She always puts hard truths in domestic language so I can hold them. We sat a while. The sun reached across the porch and found my hands. The skin there has thinned. You can see the riverways of veins. I have earned every map on my body. I have also earned the right to choose what travels them. "I worry that I'm becoming suspicious," I said, "that I will see danger in every gesture." "That is not suspicion," Helen said. "That is information. Suspicion is fear without facts. Information is love checking the locks." I thought about the lock that did not complain. I thought about the way my heart had tried to excuse the drawer and the bills. There is a habit of mine that keeps older women safe and a habit that puts us in harm's way. They can look like twins. One tells you to be gracious. The other tells you to be quiet. Only one deserves to stay. Helen touched my wrist with 2 fingers, a nurse finding a pulse. "You are steady," she said. "You can hold 2 truths at the same time. He is your son, and he is not safe for you right now. You do not have to choose one to honor the other." I breathed. A long, slow breath that reached the bottom of my ribs. There is a power in being seen without being pushed. Helen stood and fetched a small envelope from the table near her door. Inside was a business card for a legal aid clinic and a locksmith's number written in her neat block letters. She had anticipated me without invading me. This is the kind of kindness that does not ask for a receipt. "Call the locksmith," she said. "Change the locks before lunch. Then call the clinic and ask about durable powers of attorney, but the kind that you control, not the kind that controls you. Tell them your neighbor sent you and that you need a clean line between care and capture." I tucked the numbers into my pocket. The paper felt like a tool, not a trap. "You always have something—" "Ready," I said. "Retired nurses keep kits," she said. "Bandages, phone numbers, spare keys, and a memory for who needs what. We do not cure the world. We stop the bleeding so the body can begin." I walked home through the short fence gate that Nolan used to leap as a boy. I remember the way his shoelaces slapped his ankles and the way he would throw his backpack onto the grass, light as a dare. Memory can be a generous liar. It insists on the sweetness while it edits the harm. I let myself remember the sweetness anyway. Then I opened my door and ran my hand along the smooth wood as if thanking it for being more faithful than some people. Inside, I took the blue porcelain cup from the rack and set it where the sun could touch its crack. That line is not a flaw. It is a seam where 2 halves met themselves and decided to stay. I called the locksmith. I called the clinic. I wrote the time and names in my ledger. Then I stood very still in the center of my kitchen and listened to the quiet. It was not empty. It was full of a woman who had finally given herself permission to be kept safe by her own hands. Luna waited until the house was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum. She stood in the doorway, with her hands balled into the sleeves of her sweatshirt, then crossed the room and sat beside me on the edge of the couch. Her knees touched mine. That is how I knew the truth was heavy. She did not start with apologies or prefaces. She used the smallest voice she has, the one she keeps for the dark. "Grandma, I need to tell you something. You have to promise to breathe while I say it." I nodded. I placed my palm flat on the blue porcelain cup on the coffee table, as if the cool glaze could anchor me to the earth. Luna took a breath that lifted her shoulders. Then she began. She told it like a witness. No color, no extras, just a string of moments threaded through a narrow needle. She heard the key in the lock around lunchtime. The metallic turn came slow, like someone who had practiced. She turned off the television and moved to her bedroom door. She pressed it open just enough to make a slim triangle of sight. Through that little wedge, she saw a gray jacket cross the living room. She saw the broad back she knew. She saw Nolan pause by the coat rack. She whispered his name to herself, not out of greeting, but the way you say the name of a storm that has finally reached your county. He pulled a small white bag from his pocket. It flashed once in the light from the window. He slid it into the pocket of my green winter coat. He took out his phone and angled his face away. His voice dropped, but the room held it and handed it to Luna, clear as a bell hit with a soft mallet. "It's done. Call the police tonight. She won't suspect a thing." He hung up, looked around the room like a tourist memorizing the furniture, then left, closing the door with a careful click. Luna said she stood there shaking. She said her legs felt like two fence rails in a windstorm. She said she wanted to run to the door, pull out the bag, throw it away, scream for me. She did not. She waited. She watched. She listened for footsteps that did not return. Then she walked to the coat rack and slid her hand into the pocket and closed her fingers around the plastic. It felt like a frozen heart, small and solid, dangerous because of what it could make people believe. She did not show me the bag. She hid it in her room, under the bottom drawer where the wood bows a little. A child's safe. She came back to the living room and turned the television on so the room would look normal. She waited for my footsteps on the stairs. She looked at the door the way you look at a mouth that has already bitten you. When she finished, the room widened and narrowed at the same time. The clock seemed farther away and louder. I did not leap up or tear open the coat or call names into the air. I set my cup aside. I folded my hands over my ribs. I told my lungs what to do. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. The breathing made a small sound. It reminded me of ocean foam dragged back through pebbles. "Are you angry at me for not telling you right away?" she asked. "No," I said. "I am grateful you are brave and careful. I am grateful you are here." "Grandma, I was scared. I am still scared." "I am too," I said. "Fear is a map. It shows you where the cliffs are. We do not jump." I stood up slowly and walked to the coat rack. The green wool hung innocent. The lining brushed my knuckles. I slid my hand into the pocket, even though I knew it would be empty now. The pocket turned inside out like a tongue. I smoothed it and let it fall. I went back to the couch and sat. Luna watched my face like a nurse watches a monitor. Inside my chest, something old and soft and loyal tried to rise and make excuses. Maybe he was holding it for someone. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe. The maybes stacked like sugar cubes, pretty, easy, dissolving as soon as heat touched them. I did not speak to them. I looked at my granddaughter, who had just done what many adults fail to do. She told the truth when it was inconvenient and terrifying. I kept breathing. The air went in and out and did not change the fact that the person who used to run from the school bus to this door had returned as a man who brought danger with his own hands. I could feel the two truths press against each other until sparks struck. My son is trying to kill my life, and I still love him. I let the sentence sit whole in my head, no softening, no gauze. "Listen to me," I said. "We will not let anyone take our home or your safety. We will not panic. We will think. We will act when it is time." "What if he comes back?" she said. "He might," I said. "If he does, we meet him with light and with proof. We do not let him use our love as a blindfold." Luna nodded. Tears stood in her eyes, but did not fall. She has learned from me how to hold water without spilling it. I reached for her hand. It was small and hot. It steadied me better than any chair. "Where is it now?" I asked. "In my room," she said, "under the drawer." "Good," I said. "Do not touch it again with bare hands, not because it will hurt you, but because we may need it to speak without us." She watched me absorb the blow. She watched me choose a path that did not include wailing or cursing or breaking the first thing near my reach. Women like me have done all our loud work quietly. This would be no different. I stood and walked to the sink and filled a glass with water. I drank half. I handed her the rest. We both swallowed like we were agreeing to live. "Will you tell Helen?" she asked. "When it is useful," I said. "For now, we keep our circle small. You, me, and the truth." "What about Mom's picture?" she said, eyes flicking to the frame on the bookshelf, the one that keeps her mother's smile alive. "We let her stand there and look at us," I said. "We let her know we are protecting what she loved." I moved the blue porcelain cup back to its place on the sideboard. I set the white mug with the red ring beside it. 2 anchors, 2 histories, 2 hands I could hold without being hurt. The house felt different, not because it was unsafe, but because it had confessed. Walls know, wood listens. Tonight it will listen to me. "We will be steady," I said. "Steady wins." Rain began the way a secret begins, soft and certain, working its way into every seam. I stood in the doorway with Luna beside me and felt the first cold beads hit the backs of my hands. The maple at the edge of the yard lifted its leaves like green umbrellas. I told Luna to get my gardening trowel from the shed and a pair of dish gloves from the second drawer. She moved quickly, the sure quickness of a child who knows the difference between panic and purpose. When she returned, I slipped on the gloves and nodded toward the hallway. She understood. She ran upstairs and came down with the small white bag, not in her palm, but cradled in a folded kitchen towel as if it were a shard of glass. I met her eyes. The look we shared was an agreement as old as families. We protect the living. We protect the home. We stepped into the rain. The yard smelled like cut grass and wet metal. Each drop pinned a new bead to my hair. The world narrowed to the rectangle of earth under the maple. Slow is not always a weakness. Sometimes a slow ceremony is slow. I knelt, felt the damp soak through my jeans, and pressed the trowel into the ground. The soil gave a soft tear. I scooped and turned, making a neat hollow the size of a hand. Luna hovered close, shielding me with her slight body as if she could turn herself into a roof. I did not speak. The rain spoke. The house behind me breathed. I lowered the towel bundle into the hole and paused. Memory flared with the shape of Nolan at 5, digging for toy soldiers in this same spot, singing a nonsense song about treasure and pirates. My throat tightened and then released. Love is not proof against harm. It is proof that we tried. I set the bag into the earth and covered it with soil, then pressed the dirt flat with the heel of my hand until the surface felt level under my palm. I smoothed the ground as if tucking in a restless child. Luna handed me a handful of fallen leaves and I scattered them in a casual fan, the way wind would have laid them. We placed a small stone at the base of the trunk, a mark only we would read. The rain washed my gloves clean while they were still on my hands. I sat back on my heels and lifted my face to the sky. Drops hit my eyelashes and blurred the world into a soft shine. When I turned toward the house, the kitchen window framed the blue porcelain cup on the counter. It looked like a light in a storm, small but honest. Something inside me clicked into place. I had been a caretaker all my life. This was caretaking too, but of another order, not feeding and mending, guarding and choosing. We walked to the hose and rinsed the trowel. I peeled off the gloves and turned them inside out over the spigot, letting the rain finish what the water began. I handed the towel to Luna and told her to put it in the washer by itself. She ran inside. I stayed in the yard one breath longer and looked at the maple. The leaves trembled and then steadied, and in that tremble, I saw myself a week ago. In the steady, I saw myself now. Back inside, I locked the door and wiped the floor where our shoes had dotted the wood. Luna returned with the clean towel still damp from the spin cycle. We stood together at the sink and watched the rain streak the window. The clock in the hall ticked toward 8:30. Somewhere in the city, plans were moving. We did not have to meet them at the front door unprepared. I checked the front coat rack again. The green coat hung empty, innocent in its winter patience. I patted the pocket anyway, the way a person checks a healed scar. My hand shook once, a small tremor that passed through me like a messenger and then left. I poured water into the kettle and set it on the burner. Ritual returns the mind to itself. While the kettle heated, I took the ledger from the drawer and wrote a brief line. Maple, West Side, stone at root. My handwriting was firm. The act of writing told my fear where to sit. I called Helen. I did not lead with panic. I told her the locks had been changed and that I might need her later in the evening if the sky moved from gray to black. She said she would keep her porch light on and her shoes by the door. I thanked her and hung up. Luna stood at the kitchen threshold, wrapped in her sweatshirt like a robe. "What if he comes before the police?" she asked. "Then he will find a mother who is ready," I said, "and a child who is not alone." The kettle sang. I poured hot water over tea and set a second cup with honey for Luna. We sipped standing up as if chairs were too soft for what lay ahead. I told her we would keep the living room lights on and the back porch light off so we could see out without being seen. I told her where to stand if someone pounded on the door. I told her that fear is allowed in our home, but not in charge. At 8:45, headlights slid across the curtains and vanished. A car idled 2 houses down and then moved on. Luna and I exchanged a look. We had become animals listening for the twig that snaps under an approaching foot. The rain steadied into a fine curtain. The neighborhood grew careful and quiet. A key turned in the lock, not the new lock, the back door we had not gotten to yet. The sound was unequivocal, as intimate as a name spoken in a dark room. Luna's fingers found mine. We stood very still. The door eased open and a gust of wet air rolled down the hallway. Then his shape filled the doorway. Nolan stepped into my kitchen, hair slick with rain, chest rising with the rhythm of a man who has run a short, hard distance. He stopped when he saw me. He looked not surprised, but irritated, as if I had broken a rule he thought I would follow. "You are up," he said. "I am," I said. "It is early to be out." He glanced at the sink, at the towel, at the 2 cups. His eyes slid toward the hallway where the coat rack stood like a witness. "I forgot something," he said. "From the last time you were here," I said. He nodded. His gaze asked a question he did not speak. He took 2 steps toward the hall, not hurrying, not bold, the way a thief moves when he wants to look like a son. Luna cleared her throat. The sound was small, but it traveled the length of the room. Nolan glanced at her and then back at me. A flash of calculation crossed his face, quick as a blade catching light. I did not move aside. I did not raise my voice. I placed my palm on the counter, the way a person places a hand on a railing before a descent. "What you are looking for is not in this house," I said. Something changed in his posture, a tightening around the eyes. He played dumb. "I do not know what you mean." "I know," I said, "and that is the last time you will say that in this kitchen." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Water dripped from his jacket onto the tile, darkening it in coins. He adjusted his tone. "Mom, I needed to check on you," he said. "There was a call about suspicious activity on the block." "There is nothing suspicious here," I said. "Only a grandmother and her granddaughter making tea." He looked toward the back porch again. He was measuring the distance between pretense and confession. He tapped his pocket with 2 fingers, the same rhythm he had used on the envelope. I held his gaze and did not blink. "You should go home," I said. "The weather is turning and this house is closed for the night." He stood there, a beat. Too long. The moment stretches the way a wire stretches when a weight is added, silent and significant. Then he gave a narrow smile that did not reach his eyes. "I will come by tomorrow," he said. "Come by for dinner," I said, "not for paperwork." He left by the same door he had entered, careful and quiet, but the air he left behind told the truth. He had expected to move the pieces on my board. Instead, he found me holding the queen and the clock. I turned the deadbolt, then slid the new chain into place. Luna let go of my hand and exhaled, a long, shaking breath that turned into something steadier by the end. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the house felt aligned. The first reversal had clicked. The next would require more light. He came back after 9. Not with a key this time, but with a knock that tried to sound like care. The rain had softened to a whisper. The kitchen light made a bright island on the floor, and the blue porcelain cup sat drying upside down like a lighthouse that knew its job. I opened the door because I am not afraid of the rooms I pay for. Nolan stepped in with his hands spread in a harmless shape, a boy's shape borrowed by a man. He smelled like wet wool and cologne. His hair was combed flat as if he had prepared for a performance. "Mom," he said gently, "I should have called. I was worried about you." I did not answer. I moved to the stove and turned the flame under the kettle to low. The whistle would be too loud for the conversation he had planned, and I wanted the room to stay quiet enough for truth. He glanced at the table, at the chair he used to call his. Then he moved toward it without asking and sat like a guest who wanted to look like family. "I need to explain," he began. "It has been a hard year. Work is slow. I made some loans I should not have made. People are leaning on me. I know how that sounds. I am not a bad person. I am just in a bad loop." I leaned on the counter and folded my hands. My silence had weight. He started to fill it, the way water finds a hollow. "I can fix it," he said quickly. "I just need a bridge. 50 now, maybe 20 more in a month. After that, things stabilize. You would not even feel it, because I would pay you back. We can set up automatic transfers so you do not have to do anything. I will handle every detail." He waited for resistance so he could wrestle. I gave him none. The clock in the hall ticked on his behalf. "I know what you are thinking," he said. "You are thinking I should stand on my own. I will. I just need you to be my mom one more time. One more time and this nightmare ends." Luna stood in the doorway to the living room, wrapped in her sweatshirt, small as a comma. I met her eyes. She nodded once and lifted her phone at her side, thumb sliding to the recorder. She kept her face simple the way good actors do when the scene is doing the work. Nolan softened his voice. "When Dad left, you told me real? Family steps up when it hurts. I hear your words every day. I am trying to stand the way you taught me. Please do not make me beg in front of my child." I let the sentence rest in the room. I turned the flame off and poured hot water over tea. The steam rose like a curtain. I set a cup in front of him and a cup near my side of the table. I did not sit. I stayed standing, a quiet line between him and the drawers where we keep important things. He wrapped his hands around the cup without drinking. "The truth is simple," he said. "If I do not pay, it gets ugly. These men are not patient. They talk about liens and civil filings, but I know what that means when it gets dark. I do not want any of that near you or Luna. Help me and it stays far away." The liar in his sentence was not the fear. Fear was real. The liar was the direction of it. He wanted me to fear him more than for him. I kept my breathing even. Silence is not the absence of speech. It is a decision about timing. I let him try another door. "I brought the forms again," he said, touching his jacket pocket. "It is just a revocable trust. You stay in charge. I only step in if something happens. It would let me act fast if I need to protect you. It is a kindness, Mom. Let me be the son you taught me to be." The kettle pinged as the metal cooled. In the living room, Luna shifted her weight from one foot to the other, quiet as a page turning. I watched Nolan's eyes flick toward the hallway where the coat rack stood. He did not look long, but he looked. The house noticed. I moved to the chair opposite him and sat, not to negotiate, but to take my place in my own story. He leaned forward, hopeful. I placed my palms flat on the table. The wood was scarred from years of plates and homework and bills. It had held everything we were and everything we are. "I hear you," I said finally. He exhaled, relief rushing to meet the sound. "And I will not sign," I said. The relief broke against the table like a small wave against rock. He blinked. His mouth opened and closed once. He tried a softer angle. "I am asking for trust," he said. "I am your son." I let the silence widen by an inch. He tried again. "Say something," he whispered. I held his gaze. When I spoke, I kept my voice soft so the words would land where they belonged. I am your mother. I know the sound of you when you are telling the truth, and I know the sound of you when you are building a case. You are building. You want my name on a line to buy you time. Time is not for sale here. Color rose in his face. So you would rather watch me drown than reach for me. I will not let you drag me under to save you, I said. He pushed back his chair a fraction. The legs squeaked, a thin animal sound. He looked toward the hallway again, then back at me. His hand slid toward his pocket and stopped. He understood there was more than one witness in this room. Do you love me at all? He asked. I did not answer the way he expected. I let silence work. Love is not a signature on a paper written in fear. Love is a boundary kept when it shakes. He stared at me, then stood, then sat again as if a string pulled him back. Finally, he lifted the cup and took a sip. He winced. The tea had gone cold. Tomorrow, he said, gathering himself. I will come back tomorrow and we will be calmer, and you will see that this is not a trap. Come for dinner, I said. Leave the paper at home. He stared a second longer, then walked to the door. He did not look at Luna. He opened the door and left the way storms sometimes move off a coastline, not because the shore asked, but because weather changes. I closed the door and turned the lock. Luna stopped the recording and pressed the phone to her chest like a metal urn. We stood in the kitchen light and listened to the quiet name of what had just happened. Silence had held the room, and in holding it, had held us. The sirens began as a distant thread and drew themselves tight around our block. Blue and red light brushed the maple leaves and slid across the kitchen ceiling like fish beneath a boat. Luna moved to my side without a word. I put one hand on the counter where the blue porcelain cup sat upright and steady. When the doorbell rang, a firm, official sound, I opened it at once. 2 officers stood on the porch in the damp shine, an older man with a lined face, a younger woman with a notebook already uncapped. Good evening, ma'am, the man said. We received a call about suspected narcotics at this address. May we come in? Yes, I said. Please do. I consent to a search of the house. I would like to watch as you move through each room. The woman glanced at the man, then nodded. Thank you for your cooperation, she said. Who else is present in the home? My granddaughter, I said. She's 14. She will remain in my sight. They stepped into the entry and scanned the living room with the practiced sweep of people who have learned to see more than furniture. The older officer's radio crackled. He turned the volume down. I felt a stillness open in me, the kind that comes before a nurse draws blood. You cannot rush the needle. You breathe and let the work be done. And any weapons in the house, he asked. No, I said. You may search anywhere you need to. He nodded. We'll start here. They lifted cushions, checked under the couch, and opened drawers. The younger officer ran a gloved hand along the top edge of the bookcase and looked behind frames. I followed 2 steps behind, hands visible, voice even. Luna stayed at the threshold. Her phone lay face down in her palm. Her thumb rested near the recorder, not pressing it, just knowing it was there. We moved to the dining room. The table held the faint constellation of old scratches and holiday cuts. The officer glanced at the coat rack. My green coat hung calmly, unbothered. He reached into both pockets and turned the lining out. Empty air fell to the floor. He looked at me. I held his gaze without triumph or fear. There is a kitchen, I said. Please, it is this way. In the kitchen, I stepped back and let them have the room. The younger officer opened the pantry, the cabinet under the sink, the drawer where I keep dish gloves and tape. Her movements were efficient and respectful. She put things back exactly the way she found them. The older officer opened the freezer, then the sugar canister, then the flour bin. He pressed the lid on each and listened for the sound that would tell him about hidden weight. He heard sugar and flour, nothing else. Any outbuildings? He asked. A small shed, I said. It is locked. I can get the key. We'll finish inside first, he said. They checked the bathroom, the linen closet, the hall cabinet where I keep extra light bulbs and old vases. I unlocked my bedroom and stood aside while they looked under the bed, inside the dresser, behind the framed embroidery that hung above the headboard. The embroidery says, "Be kind when you can. Always you can." The younger officer read it, the way people read things when their guard drops for a second. She put it back with care. When we reached Luna's room, I asked if we might all enter together. They agreed. Luna stood by her desk and touched the wooden edge as if greeting a friend. The officers opened drawers, moved the stack of art supplies, peeked at the shoebox under the bed. The shoebox held shoes. The room held a child's life, slightly tidier than usual. The older officer's radio murmured again. He said copy and turned it down once more. We returned to the living room. The older officer removed his gloves and pressed the bridge of his nose with his thumb and forefinger, not in frustration, but in the careful way of a man keeping balance. "Ma'am," he said, "we did not find anything illegal. We will note your cooperation. If there is another call, we will reference this search." "Thank you," I said. "Officer, may I ask whether the call was anonymous?" "It was," he said. "I cannot disclose more." "I understand," I said. "Please know this home welcomes your scrutiny at any time. We have nothing to hide." A car door shut outside. Footsteps came quickly up the walk. The porch light caught a familiar shape. Nolan appeared in the doorway, breath high, face composed into concern so quickly it looked rehearsed. "Mom," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I saw the lights. Is everything all right, officers? I am her son." The younger officer glanced at me. I nodded once to show I was calm. Nolan looked from the hall to the coat rack to my face, trying to take the measure of the room. His eyes asked a question the officers could not hear. Did they find it? I let silence answer. "We received a report," the older officer said to Nolan. "We have conducted a full search with consent. Nothing was found." Nolan's mouth softened into what he hoped passed for relief. A smaller, truer flicker crossed it like a shadow. His gaze darted to the green coat again. He dropped it and shifted toward paternal warmth. "Thank you for checking," he said. "My mother can be trusting. I worry about people taking advantage." "I appreciate your concern," the younger officer said, cool but courteous. "From what I see, your mother is organized and aware." "Always," I said, and kept my voice gentle. The older officer handed me a small card. "If there are any further issues, call this number directly." "I will," I said. They walked to the door. Nolan stepped aside and held it for them. The gentleman act sat on his shoulders like a jacket 2 sizes too small. When the officers reached the porch, "Igisa." The older one paused and looked back at me. "Good evening, ma'am." There was a seam of respect stitched into the words. I felt it and let it land. When the door shut, the house returned to itself. The rain had thinned to a hush. Nolan turned to me quickly, the polite mask slipping, panic pushing up from under his skin like fire through cracks. He moved toward the hall. "Where's your coat?" he asked too lightly. "Hanging where it always hangs," I said. He reached into one pocket, then the other, and found only lining. His eyes flared, then flicked to Luna. She did not flinch. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her like a small choir member at rest. "What did you do?" he whispered. "I kept our home safe," I said. He took a step toward me. His breath came short, his hands open in a plea that felt late. "This is bad for me," he said under his breath. "You do not understand what you have done." "I understand exactly," I said. "You brought danger to my door. It left empty-handed." He looked toward the window where the last wash of blue light faded from the glass. He swallowed hard. The performance had ended. The audience had left. He was alone with the script he wrote. He backed toward the door, eyes restless, mind racing ahead to the next move. He reached for the knob and stopped. "You are making a mistake," he said. "I have made many," I said. "Tonight is not one of them." He left without another word. I turned the lock. Luna slipped her hand into mine. We stood in the kitchen light while the house breathed. The reversal was complete. The law had seen what was here and what was not. The night did not feel innocent, but it felt honest, and that is better. He was back before the street dried, pounding once on the door like a man who wanted the wood to remember him. I opened it because I wanted him to see my face in the frame he had been trying to replace. The porch light cut a clean circle around us. Nolan stepped in with a jerked smile that failed on the way up. "We need to talk," he said. "We are in the kitchen," I said. "Talk in the light." Luna moved to the archway and leaned her shoulder against the trim, the way a child leans into a tree that has never let her fall. Her phone hung at her side. She did not lift it. She did not need to yet. Nolan's eyes ran the room like fingers testing seams. He stopped on the coat rack, then on the window, then on the blue porcelain cup, turned right side up near the sink. He looked like a man who had moved pieces in the dark and returned to find someone had spun the board. "What did you tell them?" he demanded. "The officers," I said, keeping my voice even, "were told the truth. They were also shown it." He laughed without humor. "There was nothing to show." "Correct," I said. "Nothing to find." He took 2 steps closer. Rain clung to his lashes and made his eyes brighter than they were. "You think you won because you got lucky. You think this is over because the kitchen is tidy and the law likes you. It is not over." "It is over for tonight," I said. "Sit if you want to use your words." He stayed standing. The tendons in his neck stood like ropes under load. "You do not get it. I had a clock on this. I had it lined up so neatly a child could have connected the dots. 12 hours. That is all I needed." "Needed for what?" I asked. "To clear a debt," he snapped. "To get breathing room. To move the house before the sharks smelled the blood." He heard himself and flinched. He tried to pull the sentence back into his mouth. He failed. Words do not return to cages once they taste air. He shifted to pity. "They would have taken it anyway," he said more softly. "They would have found a way to squeeze you. I was trying to control the damage." "By making the damage mine," I said. "I put it where they could find it fast," he blurted, then froze as if the air had gone solid. Luna's thumb slid. The recording began, the red light tucked inside the black bezel like a heartbeat. She kept her eyes on me. Nolan did not notice. Confession often happens in the same room as blindness. He forced a laugh that did not fit his face. "I am not saying I did anything. I am giving you a hypothetical." "You said I put it," I said. He threw his hands up. "Fine. I made a mistake. I thought I could control the timing. Anonymous calls are not perfect. People get the address wrong. Dispatch screws up. But the plan was clean. It should have been clean." "What plan?" I asked, my voice so calm it made the question a mirror. "The call at 9, he said, too fast now to stop himself. "The officers were at the door by 9:30. Your coat on the rack, the bag in the pocket, shock on my face when I showed up at the same time. The worried son. The narrative writes itself." He ran a hand through his hair and left a wet stripe. "Do you know what it took to get that bag without getting eaten? Alive. Do you know what it cost me? You think you are the only one who has bled for this family." I felt my body try to fold under the weight of his sentences. I did not fold. I pulled out a chair and sat. That is how you keep the room from spinning. You take a seat in your own life. "Where is it now?" he demanded, snapping back to the present. "Do not lie to me." "In the past," I said. He stared. The meaning landed. He looked toward the back window and saw the maple's black ribs against the bruised sky. Panic came up through him like heat from a vent. "You buried it," he said. "You buried the only thing that could make this work." "I buried the only thing that could break this house," I said. He paced once, twice, a tight line between sink and stove. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its stage directions. It was just a man's voice, thin at the edges. "I tried to do this the easy way," he said. "I brought papers. I said trust. I threw you a rope. You looked at it and saw a snake." "I saw a rope tied to a weight," I said, "and I am not built to be dragged." He slapped the envelope onto the table so hard the flap split. "Sign it now. Put the house in trust. I will fix the mess. I am your son." I let the silence do its work. It expanded between us until his breathing had to find room. I could feel Luna's stillness behind me like a steel line. When I spoke the sentence that belonged to this moment and to me. I am still clear enough to sign what needs signing, or to refuse, he sneered. You think that makes you strong. It makes you stubborn. It makes me safe, I said. It makes her safe. He looked at Luna, and for a second the boy he had been flickered across his face, small and frightened and wanting a door opened by love. Then the man returned, all calculation and speed. You do not get to do this to me, he said, voice rising. You do not get to decide. I do not get a piece of what I built with you. You built none of this, I said. You were fed at this table. You were warmed by this furnace. You were taught how to write your name in this room. I paid for the roof by selling my wedding china, one plate at a time. You did not build this. You were built by it. He grabbed the envelope and jabbed it with his finger. If you sign, the creditors cannot touch it. If you do not, they come for me, and then for anything that smells like me. They will be on this porch whether you invite them or not. Then go to the police, I said. Tell the truth about the people you owe and the threats they make. He laughed hard, then coughed it into a scoff. You think truth buys protection. Truth buys paper. Paper buys time. Time is what I was trying to buy. With my arrest, I said. With a night, he shot back. One night in a holding pattern while I moved pieces. It would not have stuck. They would have let you go. In the morning with a warning and a wagging finger. You would have been embarrassed for a moment, and then it would be over. We would have saved the house, and Luna would never have had to know any of it. She knows all of it, I said. He turned. Luna had lifted the phone chest high. The red dot pulsed. She held his gaze without blinking. He swore under his breath, a single harsh syllable that sounded like a plate dropped on tile. Delete it, he said. No, she said. You cannot use that, he said to me, finding a new law in his mouth. It is illegal to record people without consent. In this state, I said quietly, one person's consent is enough. The person holding the phone consents. The person she loves consents too. His face went slack, then hardened. He swept a hand across the table and sent the split envelope skidding. Papers fanned and slid to a stop against the cup with the red ring. The cup did not move. He stared at it as if the old ceramic had challenged him to a duel. This is not the end, he said. It is the end of this method, I said. He stood breathing like a runner who has lost the finish line. For a second, I thought he would lunge or plead or collapse. He did none of those. He gathered the papers with shaking hands, stuffed them into his jacket without order, and walked to the door. On the threshold, he paused and spoke without turning. You will be sorry, he said. I have been sorry before, I said. It did not kill me. He left. The air he had heated with panic cooled. Luna pressed stop and saved the file twice. She sat beside me and leaned her shoulder into mine until our bones met. I placed my palm on the blue porcelain cup and felt its familiar chill. The house listened. The recording sat in Luna's phone like a small lighthouse, ready to throw a beam when night asked for it. The station smelled like old coffee and winter coats that never quite dry. Neon hummed overhead, a tired halo that flattened everyone into the same shade of pale. I held my tote tight against my ribs. Inside, a printed transcript of Luna's recording, my stubby pencil ledger with last night's notes, and the blue flash drive Helen had labeled in block letters. Audio 1. Backup. Helen walked half a step behind me the way nurses do when a patient insists on walking in on her own. Her hand brushed my elbow once, not to guide me, but to say I'm here. At the front desk, a young officer looked up with the weary kindness of someone who spends all day translating emergencies into forms. How can I help you, ma'am? I need to file a report, I said. It concerns an attempted frame involving narcotics and elder financial abuse. We have a confession recorded lawfully. My neighbor is here as support. He blinked at the word confession, then gestured to a row of plastic chairs. A detective will be with you shortly. We sat. The chairs breathed cold through my coat. A man in a paint-splattered hoodie argued quietly into his phone. Somewhere deeper in the building, a copier chunked and sighed. Helen leaned forward, forearms on her knees, the posture of a runner resting at the half-mile. "You don't have to be brave," she said without looking at me. "You already were." A door opened and a woman in plain clothes stepped out, late 40s, tidy gray bob, eyes that measured without bruising. "I'm Detective Alvarez," she said. "Come with me." Her interview room was small, fluorescent, and clean in the way hospitals are clean. You sensed what had been scrubbed away. I sat where she pointed. Helen took the chair against the wall and folded her hands, a chapel in human form. "Start at the beginning," Alvarez said, clicking her pen. I began with Luna's morning, her "I don't feel well," my hand on her forehead, the key in the lock while I was upstairs changing, the gray jacket in my living room, the small white bag sliding into my green coat's pocket. I kept my voice as steady as the ledger lines in my purse. When I reached the phone call, "It's done. Call the police tonight. She won't suspect a thing." Alvarez's pen stopped, then continued. She asked for times, names, distances in feet. I had them. "You consented to a search last night," she said. "Officers Miller and Chen noted full cooperation and no contraband found." "Correct," I said, "because by then the bag was not in the house." Her eyes lifted. "Where was it?" "In the backyard," I said. "Buried at the base of the maple west side. I placed it using dish gloves and a towel. I can mark the exact spot. I documented the time and location in this ledger." I slid the book across. She studied the stubby pencil lines as if they were coordinates on a chart. "And the recording," she said. I set Luna's phone on the table, then the flash drive, then the paper transcript with timestamps. "This is a lawful, one-party consent recording," I said. "Captured in my kitchen. My granddaughter initiated. I consent." He did not, but the statute does not require it. Alvarez's mouth did not smile, but her eyes warmed a fraction. "You've done your homework." "I have had a long night," I said. We listened together. Nolan's voice filled the small room. "You think you won because you got lucky later." I put it where they could find it fast. The call at 9, your coat on the rack, the bag in the pocket, the worried son, the narrative writes itself, then my sentence, the one I had saved for the moment that would need it most. I am still clear enough to sign what needs signing, or to refuse. When it ended, the room was very quiet. Even the neon seemed to take a breath. Alvarez capped her pen and leaned back. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, "this is substantial. We will send evidence technicians to recover the bag and to dust the plastic for prints. We'll subpoena the dispatch. Records, trace the anonymous call, and pull surveillance from your block if any cameras face your door. Given the content of this recording, I will request immediate interviews with your son and any associate who participated." She paused. "Do you have reason to believe he acted with someone else?" "He said 'we' to a woman on the earlier call," I said. "I do not have a name. My granddaughter heard only a voice." Alvarez nodded. "We will find the number. We will find the woman." She turned to Helen. "And you are?" "Helen Grady," Helen said. "Neighbor. Retired nurse. I can corroborate timeline elements from calls last night and this morning, and I'm here because people shake less when someone they trust is in the room." "Noted," Alvarez said, a small respect stitched into the word. She slid a form toward me. "We'll formalize your statement. I'll also file for a protective order preventing your son from contacting you or your granddaughter during the investigation." I signed where the lines instructed. My name looked steady, as if the pen had been practicing for this page for years. Alvarez photocopied my ledger entries and returned the original as if handing back a relic. "Keep holding this," she said. "Paper remembers." "Detective?" I asked. "What happens when he hears we came here?" "He will have a choice," she said, "to tell us his version while the facts are still wet, or to let the facts dry without him. Either way, the case will walk." I exhaled a long, careful rope of air. The room did not get warmer, but my back loosened. Alvarez stood. "Give me an hour to organize the team. Go home. Do not engage with him. If he appears, call 911 and then call me." She pressed a card into my palm. The stalk was thick and textured. It felt real. In the hallway, Helen touched my wrist again, 2 fingers finding a pulse. "Still steady," she said. Outside, the late morning had the chrome sheen of a day that had not decided what it wants to be. We walked to my car, the old sedan that smells faintly of lemon oil. "You did not need me," Helen said, clicking her seatbelt. "But I'm glad I watched you not need me." "I needed you," I said. "I needed someone to witness me not bending." She smiled at the windshield, the way people smile when their heart nods. We drove home past a row of storefronts with neon signs turned off in daylight. All that glass, all that gas, waiting to glow when night returns. Evidence would go into bags. Calls would be traced. Dirt would give up what it held. The cold lights of the station had not warmed, but truth had moved under them, and moving was enough. Courtrooms have a smell, paper, varnish, and a sweetness from old polish that clings to the benches. The sound is measured, too. Shoes on tile, a bailiff's baritone, the snap of a binder ring. I sat at the petitioner's table with Detective Alvarez on one side and the assistant district attorney on the other. Helen was in the second row, her hands folded as if she were holding a fragile bird. Luna sat beside her, spine straight, chin up. I did not turn to look. I kept my eyes on the judge's bench, on the clock above it that counted in a steady, neutral way. They brought Nolan in through the side door. His suit hung a shade too loose. His tie was knotted with care. He scanned the room and landed on me. I did not return his gaze. A bailiff called the case. The judge, a woman with winter white hair and a face that had learned how to hear without flinching, nodded for us to begin. The ADA stood. She outlined the timeline with clean lines, the anonymous call, the consent search, the recording in my kitchen, the recovery of the bag at the base of the maple, the prints that matched Nolan's right index and thumb. She did not touch the microphone. She did not need the amplification. Truth carried. Then Nolan's attorney rose and poured performance into the room. He spoke of desperate sons, of predatory lenders, of a widowed mother overwhelmed by fear and rumor. He called the recording a misunderstanding, the burial an overreaction, the fingerprints an accident from a borrowed coat. He asked the judge to see the human tangle behind the clean lines and to place me at the center of that tangle with my worry and my influence. When it was Nolan's turn, he stood and faced the bench, then turned his body halfway toward me, angling for a shared history. "Your Honor," he said, voice pitched to ache, "my mother has always been cautious. Lately, she has been more than cautious. She misread my efforts to help as threats. I brought paperwork to protect her. She refuses to accept that I am trying to keep her safe. She buried something she did not understand and built a story on her fear. I am not a criminal. I am a son trying to hold things together." I did not lift my head to meet his eyes. Sometimes seeing is permission. Today, I had none to give. I watched the judge's pen make small notes. I watched the ADA's jaw remain still. I watched a single speck of dust climb a shaft of light as if it had all afternoon to decide where to land. The ADA called me. I walked to the witness stand and set my palm against the book. I swore. The word felt like a hinge sliding home. I sat and folded my hands in my lap. They did not shake. The ADA asked for my name, my age, my address. Then she asked what had happened. I gave it to her in the same order I had given it to Alvarez. Luna's sick voice in the morning, the key in the lock, the gray jacket, the bag sliding into my green coat, the call at 9, the doorbell at 9:30, the search that found nothing because the danger had been moved outside. I described the recording without drama and the burial without pride. I described my son only by his actions. When the ADA finished, Nolan's attorney stepped forward and smiled in the way men do when they want you to. Think they are about to be gentle. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "you love your son." "Yes," I said, "and love can make people see patterns where none exist." "Sometimes," I said, "and sometimes love makes a person careful enough to write things down so the facts do not drown in feeling." He circled. He asked whether I had ever misplaced my keys, whether I ever forgot a burner on low, whether I had signed forms I did not fully read in a doctor's office. He tried to make my ordinary frailties into a theater for doubt. I stayed in my seat and let the questions pass through me like the weather. "Isn't it possible," he said finally, "that you misunderstood a conversation about protection and spun it into a conspiracy because fear has become your default lens?" I turned my head to the judge, not to him. "Your Honor," I said, "I am not against my son. I am protecting what remains of my life." I let the words stand on their own feet. The judge's eyes lifted to mine. For the first time that morning, I felt seen and not inspected. The attorney pressed. He asked if I had ever told Nolan that I did not trust him. "I told him," I said, "that I'm still clear enough to sign what needs signing, or to refuse." The sentence settled in the room like a precise weight. He shifted to the recording. He called it entrapment. The ADA objected. The judge sustained. He moved to the bag. He asked whether I had touched it with my bare hands. "No," I said. "Dish gloves and a towel. I have cleaned houses long enough to know how residue travels." A small ripple of breath moved through the gallery. Even strangers recognized competence. He tried a final angle. "If this court were to find your son guilty, would you feel vindicated?" I shook my head. "No, I would feel safe. Safety is not vindication, it is oxygen." He sat. The ADA called Alvarez. She spoke to the call log, to the dispatch timestamp at 9:03, to the phone number traced to a woman named Mara, whose messages with Nolan had been recovered and entered under seal. She spoke to the prints, to the chain of custody, to the consistency between my ledger times and the radio stamps in the officer's notes. The case did not lean on my word. It stood on its own legs and let my word rest. The judge took a recess to read. When she returned, she folded her hands and spoke without haste. She acknowledged debts and pressure and the human mess. Then she placed the law on the table like a level. It showed what was tilted. She found probable cause on the charges. She granted a protective order for me and for Luna, with no contact in person, by phone, or through others. She set conditions for release that included counseling and financial disclosures. She spoke directly to Nolan. "You do not get to draft your mother into your emergency," she said. "You do not get to make her body your collateral." Nolan turned toward me as if he could still hook my gaze and pull me back into the old choreography. I kept my eyes on the judge's bench, on the grain in the wood that ran straight and unbending. The bailiff called the next case. Papers shuffled. People stood and sat. The court moved on, as courts must. When I stepped down, Helen rose and touched my forearm with her two steady fingers. Luna's shoulder brushed my hip. We walked out into the hallway where the light was ordinary and kind. I did not look back to see if Nolan watched me leave. Some looks are attacks you no longer owe. I walked into the attorney's office with the ledger in my purse and Luna's name already spoken in my heart. The receptionist offered me water in a paper cup. I declined and touched the blue porcelain cup in my bag instead. A small comfort I had wrapped in a dish towel so it would not crack. When Mr. Sawyer called me in, I sat across from his neat desk and told him what I wanted in plain words a judge would not need to translate. I wanted my will revised. I wanted the house left to my granddaughter, full ownership, clear title, with a clause that prevented any lien or claim from my son. I wanted backups. I wanted copies kept off-site. I wanted language that closed doors to trouble before trouble could touch the knob. Mr. Sawyer listened without interruption, then repeated my requests back to me in his careful voice. He used the phrases of his trade: testamentary intent, residuary clause, spendthrift protection, and I nodded. He slid the draft across the desk for my review. Every line had a purpose. I read each sentence with the same attention I once used to check Luna's math homework. When I signed, my name moved across the paper steady as a plow line. He notarized and handed me the folder, tabbed and sealed. On the sidewalk, the wind lifted the corner of my scarf. The day had the cool shine of early spring, all steel and promise. I stood for a moment and let the decision settle into my bones. I had not cut Nolan out of my life with hate. I had traced a boundary with ink and law because love without boundaries becomes an invitation to drown. The folder felt heavier than its paper. It felt like a key. At home, I placed the will in the fireproof box beside the birth certificates and the house deed. I told Luna what I had done while we folded laundry at the kitchen table. She did not jump up or cry. She kept folding and whispered thank you. When she reached across the table and touched my forearm, her fingers were as light as a bird. I told her the clause that mattered most. No one could pressure her to sell while she was young. This house would not become someone else's emergency again. The maple out back had begun to set buds. New red points tipped each twig like punctuation, as if the tree were writing its own sentence. I will leaf again. I bought cedar planks and built 2 raised beds along the fence line. The smell of new wood mixed with damp soil felt like a clean page. I ordered seed packets with names that sounded like blessings: Little Gem, Early Girl, Blue Lake, Bright Lights. I lined the packets on the counter beneath the window where the morning light pours in and chose with care, as if I were selecting verses for a service. I joined a community garden class at the rec center on Saturdays. The instructor, a woman with soil under her nails and a laugh that bounced off the cinder block walls, taught us how to read the back of a seed packet like a prescription. Depth, spacing, days to maturity. She showed us how to test soil by feel, how to water at the base, how to watch for cutworms and hope. I took notes in pencil the way I always do and wrote small reminders to myself that had nothing to do with plants. Do not overwater when anxious. Thin seedlings early, even if it hurts. Stake before the wind demands it. On Wednesdays, I started walking to the library with a canvas bag. The book club there meets in a room that used to be the reference section. We sit in a circle under wide fluorescent lights that make everyone honest. There is a man who used to teach history, and a woman who cleans offices at night, and a high schooler who reads faster than the rest of us combined. Sometimes we disagree about endings. Sometimes we find ourselves quiet at the same sentence. I speak when I have something to add and keep my silence when silence serves the book. When someone brings store-bought cookies, I pass the plate as if I had baked them myself. It is enough to be part of the passing. I told Helen about the club, and she smiled like someone seeing a bandage removed. She came with me once and then decided her knees preferred her porch swing. She listens when I tell her what we read. After I finish each book, I write its title in my ledger under a new section I labeled Things That Grow Me. For the first time since Arthur died, my evenings do not feel like long hallways. They feel like rooms with doors I can open. The garden taught me patience in a language my body understood. Every morning, I checked the beds and pressed a finger into the soil. I celebrated the first sprouts the way other people celebrate fireworks. When a late frost threatened, I covered the beds with old sheets and stood at the back door with a cup of hot tea, watching the cloth billow and settle like sails. I thought of the night we buried the white bag by the maple and how my hands had pressed the soil flat with fear. Now they press soil with care. Same hands, new purpose. Neighbors began to stop by the fence. A young father asked about trellising beans. A woman walking her beagle told me her grandmother used to plant marigolds between tomatoes to keep pests away. I tucked seedlings into the ground the way you tuck a child into bed. Firm, kind, hopeful. When the first strawberries blushed, I rinsed 2 in the kitchen and set one on a saucer with the red ring. Luna and I ate them standing up. The sweetness surprised us both. We laughed because our faces had the same small shock at the same time. I called Mr. Sawyer once more and asked for a simple health care proxy that named Helen as the first call and Luna as the second in case of emergency. I explained my choices to Nolan's absence, in the same way I had once explained to Luna why you must not pull a cake from the oven too soon. Clear, calm, final. The law, like a garden, rewards what you do on schedule. When the book club chose a memoir about a woman who rebuilt her life in a coastal town, the discussion wandered to what rebuilding costs. Some said it costs pride. Some said it costs sleep. I said it costs the old story. If you keep telling it the same way, you cannot step into the next chapter. The group grew quiet. The history teacher nodded like a man who recognized a date on the calendar. On a Sunday afternoon, I laid out my old wedding china on the dining table. There were fewer pieces than there used to be. Life had taken its share. I wrapped each plate in brown paper and stored the box on the highest shelf of the hall closet. Then I washed the blue porcelain cup by hand and set it on the windowsill to dry. The sun lit the glaze so it looked like a lake. That cup has held coffee through grief and tea through long nights. It will hold mint from my own garden this summer. Objects do not heal you, but they can keep you company while you heal yourself. At dusk, I walked the perimeter of the yard with Luna. We paused by the maple, and I told her we would leave the ground undisturbed there until the case was closed. She reached for my hand and squeezed once. "This house feels different," she said. "Lighter." "It is choosing us back," I said. "We chose it first." Before bed, I opened my ledger and wrote 2 lines. Today, I signed to protect the future and planted to feed it. The seeds are small, but so were we once. Then I turned off the light and stood in the doorway to my room the way a captain stands at the rail. The hallway was no longer a tunnel. It was a path. Choosing myself did not require fireworks or speeches. It required showing up for the quiet tasks that make a life hold. It required saying no when the paper lied and yes when soil asked. It required trusting that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of order. I am still clear enough to sign what needs signing and clear enough to refuse. I am also clear enough to plant, to read, to pour tea, to open the gate for whoever comes in kindness. The house is steady. The garden learns my name. And in the library, under those honest lights, I let stories graft onto me until my own story grows sweeter at the edges. The first breakfast without fear tasted like ordinary toast, which is to say, like a miracle disguised as bread. Sun moved across the kitchen floor in bright rectangles. The maple cast lace on the wall. The blue porcelain cup was warm in my hand. Mint leaves from the garden clicked against the spoon. Luna slid into her chair with the comfortable heaviness of a teenager who finally slept. She watched steam rise from her tea as if the house were exhaling with us. I set out strawberries in a white bowl, not fancy, just rinsed and hulled, the way my mother used to do when money was tight and sweetness had to be simple. We ate without rushing. The clock in the hall kept honest time. No sirens, no footsteps we didn't invite, just a quiet morning that stayed. Luna looked at me over the rim of her mug. "Grandma," she asked softly, "do you feel sad?" "Yes," I said. "Of course I do." I buttered a piece of toast and laid the knife flat. But sad doesn't mean stop, and pain doesn't mean we have to keep suffering. She nodded, 12 and wise. She reached for a strawberry and held it up to the light. "It's weird," she said, "how normal feels new." "New is allowed," I said, "even when it looks old." We carried our plates to the sink and stood shoulder to shoulder, washing and drying, a small choreography we invented when she was tall enough to reach the faucet. The water ran warm and ordinary. She told me about the school play auditions. The drama teacher had posted a list, and Luna wanted to try for a part with 2 lines and 1 short song. I said I would help her practice. She said she knew I would. We used our good towels because everyday life deserves good things. After breakfast, we walked to the garden. Dew held tiny suns along the edges of lettuce leaves. The trellis Nolan and I had once built for tomatoes now held a new season's vines. Wood remembers weight, but it also remembers purpose. I showed Luna how the beans find the line without being told. "They curl," I said, wrapping my finger around the string, "and they keep going. You don't have to force them. You just have to give them something honest to climb." Helen called over the fence. Her hair was tucked under a scarf with small blue flowers that matched the morning. "Book club tonight," she reminded me. "They picked the one with the woman and the lighthouse. Bring your opinions and an appetite." "I always bring both," I said. She laughed, then looked at Luna. "Break a leg at those auditions, detective. Interrogation lessons available on my porch after dinner." "Only if there's lemonade," Luna said. "Always," Helen answered, then waved and disappeared into the sound of her wind chimes. Back inside, I opened the fireproof box and checked the folder with the new will. Not out of fear, but out of habit that had returned itself to care instead of panic. The papers did not pulse with emergency. They simply waited like tools in a drawer. I slid the box closed and set the ledger on the table. New page, new heading, morning after. I wrote, "We ate strawberries. We did not apologize for feeling safe." Mail came just before noon. A plain envelope from the court contained a schedule, pretrial dates, review hearings, the tidy calendar of a system that keeps moving. I read it once and clipped it to the fridge with the magnet shaped like a clover Luna made in 3rd grade. Law would do its work in rooms with wood and clocks. Our work was here, where soil and sentences grow at their own pace. In the afternoon, I practiced lines with Luna at the table. She stood, feet planted, shoulders down, voice clear. "Excuse me, sir," she said to the refrigerator with great dignity. "Have you seen a map of the old city?" I told her to breathe at the comma and place the question where it belonged. Not in her throat, but in the room. She tried again and found it. We high-fived quietly, the way you do when joy is better held than shouted. I took a slow walk afterward, the kind that counts birds without naming them, just to feel my feet account for the neighborhood. The corner store had put out a crate of oranges by the door. Their skins glowed under the awning like small suns. A boy on a scooter zipped by and called hello. I recognized his mother's tired wave from a decade ago, when I was the woman trying to get somewhere on time with a child who moved faster than wind. Life doubles back with kindness if you let it. When I returned, I brewed tea and called the library to ask if they still needed volunteers to reshelve returns on Thursdays. The woman on the line sounded surprised and pleased. "We always need steady hands," she said. "People who don't mind the alphabet and dust." I told her those were 2 of my oldest friends. Late afternoon tipped the light gold. I took the blue cup onto the porch and sat where the maple shade dappled my knees. A sparrow tried 3 different branches like a shopper deciding on a dress. Across the street, a man patched a flat tire and whistled between his teeth. Ordinary music. I thought of Arthur, who used to stand in this exact doorway and count the edges on winter clouds. His absence no longer felt like a room with no furniture. It felt like a bench with space beside me. Space for breath, for mint, for now. Nolan's name passed through my mind the way a weather report does, acknowledged, noted, not in control of the day. Grief did not slam or plead. It set down its boxes and sat quietly while I watered the beds. Love can stay honest without being invited back into harm. I wished him clear eyes and a willing heart. Wishing costs nothing and spends nothing. Then I turned off the hose and watched droplets cling to the basil like stars. Before dinner, I called Detective Alvarez to confirm a time for the evidence review. She answered with her steady voice and a half-joke about paperwork outliving us all. "How are you?" she asked at the end, the way professionals sometimes do without expecting a real answer. "I am choosing the order," I said, "and strawberries." "That is a good report," she said. "See you Tuesday." Luna and I cooked together, pasta with garlic and peas, salad from the garden. We set 2 plates and a third for Helen, who brought lemon bars and 3 book club opinions wrapped in wax paper. We ate with our elbows on the table and our guards down. At some point, Luna leaned back and smiled so wide it reached her eyes. "This feels like a movie," she said. "Documentary," I answered. Low budget, honest script. After we washed the last pan, Helen stood to go. She held my gaze for a second longer than usual. "You look returned," she said. "I am still returning," I answered, "but I know the way." When the house settled for the night, the kind of settling you can hear if you trust a roof, I walked the hallway and paused at the coat rack. The green coat hung there, soft and old. I slid my hand into the pocket and found nothing but lining. Empty can feel like loss. It can also feel like proof. I clicked off the hall light and stood in the dark long enough to let my eyes adjust. The shapes of our life came into view. Pictures on the wall, a stack of library books, the bowl on the entry table where we keep our keys. Everything where it belonged. At the bedroom door, Luna's voice floated from down the hall. "Grandma," she called, "are you okay?" "I am," I said. "Go to sleep. Tomorrow we will practice the lighthouse book," she laughed. "Deal." I slid under my quilt and listened to the house breathe. I thought of the sentence that had carried me through rooms where people wore badges and robes, through nights when rain sounded like somebody knocking. I had said it first to guard my name. Now I said it to bless my days. I am clear enough to sign what needs signing, and strong enough to release what no longer belongs to me. If sadness returns, and it will, I will set another place at the table. I will pour it tea, ask it to keep its feet off the chairs, and let it stay only as long as it minds the rules. I will plant again when frost lifts. I will show up at the library with comfortable shoes and good alphabet skills. I will clap in a cafeteria for a girl with 2 lines and 1 short song. I will keep the blue porcelain cup near, not as armor, but as company. Before I went to sleep, I wrote the final line in the ledger. Breakfast was ordinary. We stayed. It felt like healing. Then I turned out the light and let the dark be dark, trusting the morning to do what it has always done when given a chance. Come back. If you are listening with a hurt that has your name on it, you can sit here too. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me the first ordinary thing you will make again, and let's count those small miracles together. Sadness doesn't mean stop. Pain doesn't mean to keep suffering. We sign the lines that protect what grows. We release what asks to leave. The house is steady, the garden climbs, and I am here.